platforms, fat fish. Sit back and strap yourself in for the wildest ride on the open seas. Now, flap your fins for the fabulous Fat Fish Brothers, Eric Fish Snyder, and Brad Grunny Grunberg, a.k.a. Snacks.
Hey, get a Snickers bar, Brad. You don't look yourself, buddy. What happened? Welcome to Fat Fish. This is show number 104. Brad is effortlessly trying to get into the show. That, everyone, is comedian Ritch Shydner. Rich, welcome to Fat Fish.
Thank you.
I got to show you something if I can get there on my thing. So I want to take a look at this picture. Okay, and I want you to see if you recognize someone in that picture. Who's that on the far left?
Well, that's Tony Visick on the far left.
Who's the third guy in?
And the third guy in is of course oh darn, he ran the Sopranos strip, Steve Sharippa.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, that would be me. And then look at this picture.
Steve Sharippa's in between you and Tony.
Right. Look at that one. That's Mom's Saloon in 1983.
Oh my God,
Tony's on the bottom.
Yeah.
So we Rich and I have a mutual friend, and Tony went through a hard time, and I helped him get to a meeting. And then
did you really?
Yes, I did. And I was him and his brother Jerry. Tony had a substance abuse problem, and we'll get to him. So go ahead.
No, I didn't know this. Go ahead, tell me the story. Go ahead.
So, I worked with him for years. We worked in a very exclusive nightclub in Los Angeles. He worked at Sloan's in West Hollywood. If you're familiar with that, I worked at Mom's. We worked at Mom's together. And Tony liked to party. And it became, to a point where he needed to get help, and he knew it. And I guess he found out in rehab, because he's always a funny guy. He was so quick-witted. I said, why the hell are you not on stage? What's your problem? So he tells me he meets a guy named Ritch Shydner. He tells me this story, right? And by the way, that's not Steve Sharippa. That's a guy, I can't mention his name because he's in that business. So, but a real-time guy.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
Whether or not that guy's a Gotti family member, I won't tell.
Yeah.
So he mentions Ritch Shydner. So Rich, just to make a long story short, to get the audience going, Tony did one of his first gigs at the Laugh Factory on Sunset, and you were there, and I was there, and we talked and we met. I said, "What a great guy!" And you were such a huge influence on this guy. And I know you've mentored a lot of comedians, and we'll talk about that. And to see the success story of a guy like Tony, bartender, substance abuse, gets out of it. Now he runs a successful, comedy a school for young comics in Scottsdale. So kudos to you. And that's the 6 degrees of separation between me and you.
That's incredible. I had no idea. Tony and I met. He was sober. I was just newly sober. I was working out at the Sports Connection in West Hollywood. We used to call it the Sports Erection. The Sports Erection in West Hollywood. I'm working out. He comes over to me. Don't know the guy. He goes, "You're doing that too fast to get any benefit." I said, "That's the story of my whole life, my man." And so we became instant friends. He saw me. He was in there before he ever went on stage. He was in the improv audience watching comics like me. He said one night, when I first got sober, I had a hard time performing substance free. And I was struggling, and I got angry at the audience a lot and stormed off a lot. And he said, one night I was up there and I was ranting, not getting any laughs. And Tony laughed. I turned to him like, "What are you laughing at?" He's the only guy in the room laughing. And he's like, "I don't know. It's a comedy club. I thought I should be laughing." We became great friends. I have so many stories about Tony. When I first met him, I go over to his apartment. Of course, we're both sober. He had a beer can collection. That was his prized possession when he was drinking. He had a wall of every beer can, because you could go down and drink at the Barney's Beanery and get beer from around the world. So he had every can. That was like his one possession. That's all he had, really, was his beer can collection up on the wall. And when we dismantled that, threw that out, he really had no personal items of any value other than his mattress on the floor. He worked hard, man. I remember taking him out on the road with me. He just worked hard. He's a charismatic guy. He's naturally funny. He really is naturally funny. And he thought he'd come out to Hollywood and be James Dean. He had about a career as long as James Dean without any movies in it. So the substances didn't lead him to any sort of great insight. No, they did to me. We've both been clean all these years. Just turned 40 myself. Tony's 40 years sober. He's just a brother to me. I mean, I really can't tell you. We had so many experiences so many times. Yeah.
This is the Fat Fish podcast with Ritch Shydner and Brad Grunberg Snacks. He's having trouble getting in. And he goes, I got a guy, Ritch Shydner. And I said, let me lead him with this story because he's going to crack. He's going to shit his pants when he
Yeah.
you know, about Tony Bissett.
I love those pictures you got there. It wasn't Sloan's. Wasn't the guy that did Boondock Saints or something? Didn't he write the script and he worked there or something? There's some story about that.
The guy who wrote the script was Troy something. He wrote the script sitting there. The guy that played Rocco was David Della Rocco, who's the bartender at Sloan's.
Oh, so there is more of a connection. There was a guy there who was hanging out Sloan's because Tony knew him and knew the story.
Yeah.
And then the guy was in there, was an actor, was in Sloan's.
Yeah, Troy Duffy's the guy that wrote the screenplay, and he wrote it. Yeah. He was right. I remember he was writing it in when in Sloan's, and all of a sudden Rocco, good-looking kid, and he casted him as Rocco, and Rocco did the sequel also. So that's another great like Schwab Hollywood story. But let's get to Ritch Shydner. I'm looking over everything you've done, and I've followed your career. I've seen you. Just the fact that the longevity for someone as long as you've done this. I'm just giving Brad in.
I got to tell a Ritch Shydner story. So I used to see him at commercial auditions. I saw him at comedy clubs. Always nice to me. I was the young guy. He was so sweet to me. He talked to me, not like some of these other fucks. And I'm telling you. So I have a great story, Fish. You're gonna love this. So I started at the L.A. Comedy Cabaret with the great Ray Bishop, and basically a couple of things happened. And I did a bit. I worked the crowd. I'm like Don Rickles, and Don Rickles was my friend. I called him a friend. He taught me a lot about being a comedian. So I go on stage, and all of a sudden, I do a bit. It goes over big, and then this comedian the next night did the same bit. So I asked this older comedian, "Are you allowed to do that?" He goes, "No, that guy's a fat fuck and a fucking thief." I'm not going to mention any names because that's not me. Carlos Mencia. Carlos,
a young Carlos stole from you back then, huh?
Yes, he did. And then I was outside in the parking lot, and Sparky and Carlos walked up on me, and they said, "Hey, Johnny Cocktails, I saw that commercial." He goes, "You were really good." "Oh, thank you so much, Sparky." "Thanks, Carlos." "That's not a national commercial, is it?" And right away I knew. I looked into his eyes. I go, "No, it was a small regional up in Oregon." He goes, "Oh, great. I mean, that's fantastic. Good luck." Walks away. Why are these motherfuckers so jealous, Ritch? Why? What the fuck?
Well, Billy Crystal had a great line. He said, "For stand-up comedians, jealousy is crack cocaine." And you're talking about insecurity, massive insecurity.
Yeah.
I think anybody in show business, right off the bat, it's a form of mental illness. That's a form of mental illness. Then stand-up comedy is another form of mental illness on top of that. Yeah. So the jealousy, it is that they're worried about. I mean, you people who think that everything's real small. There's only so much. I mean, most of us. My thing about you're either a Prince or POW. You come into this stand-up comedy from one of those two angles growing up.
Right.
And so many people came in a POW. So they, like for me, I know personally, my mom had to try to keep my dad, who was a wild alcoholic, had to keep him on the beam working. This back in the 50s and 60s when I was born and growing up. And so there wasn't much of her attention left over for 4 kids. So to us, love was a little piece of meat thrown on the floor. At the beginning of the day, you had to scramble to get what that was there. And so everybody kind of looks at things as small, finite. There's not much going to be had. There's not much success to be had. There's not much love to be had, all that kind of stuff. And they're jealous. They're jealous that they're not going to get theirs. If you got yours, I'm not getting mine because you already got what was supposed to be mine. It's all small thinking. And the ones who, the ones who dominate, the ones who actually become somebody and successful, they throw that aside fast. They don't. Yeah. They come up to you and go, I remember, I did my first Tonight Show. I probably had 90 calls, and most of them were from guys who were Shandling, Leno, guys who were there. They were already there. They weren't jealous. it's a pirate ship. Stand-up comedy is a pirate ship. When things are going well, everybody's yo yo ho ho and a bottle of rum, right? Just big party on the ship until a job shows up. Then it's every motherfucker for themselves, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, but the ones who are generous, they have that spirit from the beginning, and they just worry about the work. Just worry about the work. I don't, a guy like Seinfeld, he just cared about the work. He just cared about the joke. I mean, he'd come up to you and he'd go, "You got to that one before I did." That was a huge compliment from him. I mean, you beat Jerry to a joke. You beat Jerry to a breakthrough joke, because he was always looking for the new thing. The new thing. You know what I mean? Like, that's all he cared about was the work. And then,
Yeah, who are you friends with today? Who do you call a friend? Who do you go to?
oh man, a lot of my friends are gone, but we talked about Tony Visick, who I've always been a friend with. But people, I'm still friends with Bill Maher. I opened up for Bill in his last special in December, and the guys who I work, Jim Vallely. Jim Vallely, one of the
Yes.
greatest TV writers of my generation. I talk to him all the time. The guys I still talk to, but if you want to look at like the guys, I lost a lot of guys. I'm 72. So, I'm in that age. I'm in the kill zone. I'm in the fourth quarter. I haven't heard a 2-minute whistle yet, but I know I'm in late in the fourth quarter, so nothing
Yeah.
surprises me that way.
Yeah, me and Fish, we reconnected after, God, 20 years or 25 years. I did a show called Wingman, which was called the Cocktail Hour, and I did it with a guy named John Hyatt. He knew Sam Perkins of the Lakers, and it's called Wingman now. And I basically sleep over the guy's house with a woman, and I do everything with him. Go to the gym, go to the clothing store, and it was really good. So I'm trying to sell that. But the one comedian was really good to me, Lenny Clark.
Lenny, Lenny in Boston, those guys, man. I remember this is a true story. First time I went up there to go to Boston. Now, they had their own community. They had a scene there in the 70s. There was so many scenes, maybe a half dozen the whole country. Boston was one of them. They were glorious comedians up there. So many great comics came into that to be part of that. But they had their parochial, like everybody's parochial, territorial, So the first time I come up there, Lenny introduced me. Now, they've already put a strong show in front of me, man. Everybody doing their kick-ass 10, 15, right? So the crowd's like, fired up. And Lenny comes up and goes, "All right, this next act, he's from New York City." Right? And he lays it out there, New York City, and you hear the grumbling in the audience. They hate New York. They hated New York, And he goes, "Yeah. You know what I mean? Oh, he's got to be funny. He's got to be good because he's from New York City." And they go, they boo. And he goes, "All right, now you're ready." And he brings me up, And I come out and I go, "Lenny's so fucking drunk." He says, "I'm not from New York City. I'm from New Jersey. It's a different state." And I start busting his balls, and the audience loves it because they just want somebody's balls busted. It was one of those places, And afterwards, Lenny goes, "Hey, you're all right. Let's have a drink." This is back when we were drinking. Lenny is generous. He's funny. I mean, he's a character. He's a bigger personality. You can't. I mean, the guy dresses. Even today, he wears colors you only see on houses down in the Caribbean. He has colors, combinations he wears. I mean, he is incredible, and he wears them, and he's a guy that can pull them off. You put me in that I look like I'm doing like a character for like a sports team. Like, what is he, the Chicken Man out there? I couldn't pull that off. Lenny pulls it off. He's just a big, friendly, wild Irishman. He's funny. He's one of those guys that's naturally funny. If you told Lenny to go up there and not do his act, just talk, he would still get laughs. He would get laughs, because he's just that guy.
Yeah, Lenny has the most pastels in his fucking closet, like anybody.
Nobody can get away with what he's wearing, man.
I told Lenny,
that would surprise me, by the way.
Fish, tell your George Carlin story, and tell me your favorite comedian of all time. Let's go around the horn.
My George Carlin story? Well, before he came on, let me just show you a picture. Remember this guy, Brad? Remember Tony Visick was on our podcast?
Yeah, I remember Tony. Yes.
So I'm one of the guys.
Who's the guy in the middle? Wait, put that picture back up. Who's the guy in the middle? Is that guy from Menudo? Who the fuck is that? Oh, that's you. I'm sorry.
The guy in between me and Tony, I can't mention if he's a Gotti or not.
God, yeah.
Yeah, and the guy next to me is Craig Persky, big friend of the show. Still, big fan of yours, Brad. At Mom's Saloon, George Carlin had his offices above the bar. and he come in every day, Rich.
I'm listening.
5:30. There's eight chairs there, and for whatever reason, he always found a chair. He had his Budweiser, and he wouldn't talk to anybody except me. I'm on the bar. Little guy named Al Davis had a barbershop right next to Mom's. Not Al Davis, the owner of the Raiders, but this little guy from Arkansas who had a, how you doing there? He had a nervous laugh like when he talked. So he comes in one day. He's always trying to impress George, and he weasels his way next to George, and George never looked at you when he talked to him, except me. And he goes, hey, Fish, hey, George, you know what happened today? He goes, I was giving this broad a haircut, and she let me peek, and she had no underwear on, and I got a big, big view of her box. And George spits his beer up. And he looks at me, and he goes, did this guy just say he could see this girl's pussy? I said, yeah, George said he did. 2 weeks later, George walks in with a box. I'll make a long story short. It's a wrap present, and he gives it to Al. And Al goes, he's so excited. He goes, what is this? Not my birthday? Like that. He opens it up, and it's all different kinds of panties that George bought at different stores. And he gives it to Al and says, these are for all the girls that you got to see their boxes and got to steal their panties. That was it. He was
Oh my God.
brilliant.
Yeah.
One of my favorite comics today is in that tree, Brad, real long story short, of the Boston. I love Bill Burr. Bill Burr's crazy.
Yeah, I love Bill Burr. My favorite, of course, is Don Rickles. Don Rickles is the most amazing. I saw him when I was 7 years old on the Tonight Show, and I go, what is this? And then I went back to school and start ripping into my friends. You know what I'm saying? I got in a lot of trouble with my teachers because I was in the back of the class making everybody laugh. But Lenny Clark is up there. My favorite comic actor of all time, and I got to meet him. I was warming up the Dave Thomas show, another funny guy, and I met the man, John Candy. And John Candy took the microphone, Rich and Fish, and he told the audience, hi, I'm John Candy. Of course, we know who he is. And he goes, I've been in this business a long time. I've never seen anybody do this job so well than Johnny Cocktails. I'm like, what? I couldn't believe it. I was walking around with a boner the rest of the show. And John, I saw him with Lenny at the Palm in West Hollywood. And then I stalked him at Universal when he was doing Delirious. I waited outside his trailer, and he always remembered my name, and he always gave me a hug. And that's one of the guys I miss the most. Belushi, Farley. I mean, like you said, Rich, we've lost so many.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love those stories. I love all of them. Carlin, last two specials he did was Life is Worth Losing and it's Bad for You. Or good, yeah, I think it's Bad for You. So he would go do them down the Comedy Magic Club, run them. He would run them. Once he's written, he was running them. The way he worked it up, he wrote and then sort of memorized what he wrote and performed it on stage. So I go down there one night to see him. Some guys call up, hey, we're all going down to see George down. So I go down there, we'll sit at the table, I watch the show. Then the next night, you don't go back again, but somebody else called and said, we're going down. I said, I already saw it. Come on, it's Carlin. You got to see him again, So I go down to see him the second time. Now I've seen the show. So I'm writing notes. I'm coming up with ideas because I'm with him. I'm ahead of him a little bit, but I'm writing notes on cocktail napkins, just a stack, note after note after note on cocktail napkins. You just forget it's Carlin. There's another comic. Here's an idea. I got an idea. Here's a callback. Here's a tag. And blah, blah, blah. And after the show, we go in the dressing room, and I go, hey, George, I got some notes for you if you want them tonight. He said, hey, thanks. He puts them in his pocket. I go back out to the table. Audience is gone. It's just a bunch of comics sitting and talking. Next thing I know, Patrick Carlin, who's George's older brother, who was his muscle. When George's mouth wrote a check that his fist couldn't cover, Patrick was there to clean it up for George, right? So next thing I know, George is standing a few feet away from the table, and he's looking at me, and I look up. He goes, come here, man. Now he's still got this kind of tough street New York kind of character, right? And I walk over to him, and he goes, you gave my brother notes. Nobody ever gives my brother notes. And he lets it hang for a second, right? And I'm looking, is it going to be a right cross, uppercut? Where is it coming from, right? And then he said they're pretty good. Thanks a lot. And lets me go and walks back in, right? But he hung that line just for enough for make me wonder whether it was good or bad. He's straight faced, no indication that I was off the hook. So that's my latest Carlin story. And Rickles, You know, the thing I put a story up about Rickles. I'm putting all these stories up that cannot fit in my stand-up history show that I'm just putting up, and I don't know why I'm doing it, but I'm on a run of all these things to do it. And I
Good
put
for
a thing
you.
up. I put up stories about, my dad first saw Don Rickles back in like 1958, 59 down in Atlantic City when he was working with. My dad was down there in a convention, and he meets this guy from New York City. The guy says, "Hey, Red Fox is playing over at this Club Harlem." Club Harlem was a black nightclub in Atlantic City that was still open in the late 50s. So my dad and him go over. They're the only white guys in the room. And Red Fox goes on stage. And after a while, he said, "I want to bring up a friend of mine." And he brings up young Don Rickles. And my dad did not know who Don Rickles was. My dad knew who Red Fox was. He had comedy albums. My dad was into it. But Red brings up Don Rickles. This is all black audience. My dad and this guy from New York are the only white guys in the place. Rickles sees them, probably spotted him before he goes on stage. He gets on stage. Rickles looks around, then acts surprised. He sees my dad and his other guys. "Hey, what are you two guys doing here? You looking for your wives?" And the place falls out, man. My dad says, everybody's laughing. My dad had to look the New York guy. He didn't even get the joke. My dad was too, he was like 24-year-old guy from South Jersey. He didn't get the white guy, white chick, black guy thing. He didn't get the joke. The guy explains it to him. My dad said, never forgot it. He goes, my dad said, one thing that always struck me was that the whole time Rickles was on stage, right, Red Fox was up there with him. And my dad thought, just in case somebody rushed the stage, because in no time at all, I figured this guy is making fun of everybody. I think somebody's going to go after him. I said, "No, Dad, more importantly, he was up there laughing, letting the audience know that he was into what, Rickles was doing. And Red Fox was up there on stage laughing with it, and everything he was doing." So, but the thing I was thinking about a day or two ago was that the first stand-up comic was a guy named Artemis Ward. And he talked about, back then, he was like the first celebrity, one of the first celebrities in America, the first stand-up comic back during the Civil War in the 1860s. And he said, the problem with celebrity is eventually you become sort of just this old mass of expected ticks and turns, that you become a wax figure up there, because of what the audience expects from you and what you do. And I remember the last time I saw Rickles was maybe a year or two before he died. I went out with somebody it was in LA, and I can't remember. And he was just, they brought him on stage, in a throne, and he just sat there, and they'd bring people up to him. He used to go out when he was young. He'd stalk that crowd, man. He'd find those victims, right? And he was just up there randomly going, "Hey, hockey puck, yeah." And it was like a chatty Cathy doll, They shouldn't have been putting him on stage at that point, You know what I mean? Maybe he was keeping him alive. I don't know, but at a certain point, you do become that sort of, he was no longer being the sharp, quick, off the top of his head. He was just kind of repeating lines that had worked the years before. That's strange to me, but I did love Rickles. And Rickles, they always talked about Jackie Leonard. You remember Jackie Leonard? When he was doing what Rickles was doing before Rickles, he was an attack comic, insult comic, they called him. And Rickles came along, and some people called Rickles the bus and truck version of Jackie Leonard. But I think my examination of them is that there was big difference between their acts. Rickles and Jackie Leonard were very different in this way. Jackie Leonard attacked the whole audience. He attacked the whole audience. He'd come out and goes, you people, if Moses had met you, he'd have 10 more commandments. And he'd mock the whole audience, right? You know what I mean? But Rickles came and attacked individuals. That's a big difference. Rickles picked them apart individually, and so it's a big difference. And also somebody else made this observation. I read it in a book that the big difference was Jackie Leonard looked like he meant it. He had that sort of, there was a little edge to anger to him. And with Rickles, you knew he didn't mean it. Rickles had a lightness about him that you knew he was just ball busting, which I grew up with that. That's a sense of humor I get. My dad loved Rickles above all else because my dad was a classic ball buster, and so I don't know. That's in my house. If you weren't being made fun of, nobody cared about you. That's what my buddies and I were like, if
Rich,
you were ignored, I'm sorry, I go on forever. I'm sorry.
No. It's your show. But Brad sent me this wonderful TikTok, and I'm looking at you talking about a comic that was so cutting edge for the time. You put a thing on about Lenny Bruce. Did he have an influence on you because of the way his style was so different and avant-garde for the time? Talk about Lenny Bruce.
I got turned on to Lenny Bruce about 1972. I stayed, it's a whole long story, but the short version, I stayed with this Jewish family in my hometown. There were only 5 Jewish families in my hometown. I stayed with them for the summer. My dad kicked me out of the house. We had a fist fight. He threw me out of the house. I was in their attic for the summer, and they had comedy albums like I'd never seen. You know, they had all these, just Credibility Gap, all these different groups, and they had Lenny Bruce. They had Lenny Bruce, which I'd never heard before. My dad did not have Lenny Bruce. Huge. I could not do what he did. I was too much of a people pleaser to do what Lenny did. But people today don't get him. But you can only judge. This is again my opinion. You can only judge comics against the comics they were competing with in their era. The same with athletes. You can't compete outside that. You can't compare outside that. You can only judge him. And if you judge Lenny by what he was doing compared to what everybody else was doing in that era. Even a guy like Dick Gregory, who's one of the greatest of all time. Dick Gregory, who broke the color barrier, was the Jackie Robinson of stand-up. Dick Gregory watched Lenny Bruce and went, 8th wonder of our world. Even guys of that era who were honest had to say, because he was taking on subjects nobody else took on. In fact, even took trite subjects like mother-in-law jokes. Everybody back then had a mother-in-law joke. People forget the context of that was back then. Mother-in-laws lived in the house. There were multi-generational families living under one roof. And that's where you got the friction that would cause mother-in-law jokes. But today, nobody has mother-in-law jokes because mother-in-laws don't live with you, not 90% of the time, right? So who cares? Who cares? She doesn't bother you that much. But Lenny took the mother-in-law joke and did a whole twist on that. Here's Lenny's mother-in-law joke. He said, yeah, my mother-in-law broke up our marriage. My wife came home from work early and found us in bed together. I mean, that's completely. I mean, everybody, you imagine back in 1960 hearing that going, what the? He's just talking about banging his mother-in-law.
Rich, let me ask you this. Did Lenny Bruce die of drug overdose or alcoholism?
Yeah.
Oh, he did.
No. Yeah. Look, Lenny, here's a couple things. I always talk about Lenny. It wasn't the 4-letter words that got Lenny. Bell Barth cursed more than Lenny all the time. A guy named B.S. Pulley cursed all the time. What they went after Lenny for, in my opinion, again, and not just my opinion, there's people wrote about it, other people, is that he was a Jewish guy going after all religions. He went after the Jewish religion. He went after the Catholics, the Protestants, the Catholics who were arresting him. You look at all his arrests, he was being arrested by Catholic police officers, prosecuted by Catholics, judged by Catholics. There was a lot of Catholics in the legal system when Lenny was no doubt about it, and by today's standards, if you look at it, was a drug addict. He would deny it, but he was. And here's another thing that got him in trouble. He got busted for drugs in Philly in 1961, I think, something like that. He got busted for drugs. He was at a party. He insulted a guy in law enforcement at a party, and the guy had the police raid his hotel room and found narcotics. So he's in trouble. Attorney hires a local attorney, and the attorney comes back and says, $15,000, it all goes away. This is a time-honored showbiz gambit, all right? You pay to keep your name out of the papers for drugs and alcohol and showbiz, and, you grease the system, right? Lenny goes to the press. He goes to the press and exposes this game, and that was not good for him. And I think that also amped around the country because it was a national bit of news. Law enforcement all over the country went, this guy's not playing by the right rules. He's outside the game. He's legal. It's like legal to hunt him, and so it definitely hurt him. I think that hurt him. But
I want to go around
Lenny.
Yeah. I mean, you being an alcoholic, you have a memory like an elephant. That is unbelievable. The attention to detail. No, I'm telling you. I talk to a lot of people. I try not to talk to Fish, but he's my partner. but I want to go around the horn and see how we all started. So in college, my buddy got me into stand up, and I go, this is pretty cool. My friend Mark Levinson, he goes, come on up. I'm doing this Comedy Zone in Tucson, Arizona. So I went up, and then I went to Vegas, and Gary Shandling, he opened for Joan Rivers, and he's doing his act. And then all of a sudden from the crowd, I start busting on him. You're from Tucson. Yeah. Did you ever get laid? Blah, blah, blah. He destroyed me for 20 minutes and kept callbacks back to me, back to me. So I'm in the casino. He said, you're a funny guy. You should be a comedian. And his girlfriend saw me at the airport. So I wrote him a letter with all these things. He gave me his home number and I used to call him in LA. I was in Tucson because he's from Tucson and he went to the University of Arizona. And he gave me great advice. And God rest his soul, Gary Shanley. It was amazing. And I made him part of my show. I make fun of myself, Don Rickles style, because if you can make fun of yourself, you can make fun of anybody. And that's what I've been doing. I've been working the Trop and doing stuff. I do a lot of MC work, and I also was a warm-up guy for 10 years, which was a lot of fun, but very difficult. Warming up audience is not being a stand-up. You're kind of like a babysitter. Did you ever warm up an audience, Rich?
Yes, Roseanne.
Oh, my God.
Roseanne, wow. There was a time when they lost her, and I was writing on the Roseanne show. It's like 93, 94, 95, in there. When I first started writing for 93, I think. And they lost the warm-up. And so they had a lot of stand-ups on the writing staff. And they came in, they go, we need somebody to do warm-up tonight. And I wasn't really responding. Then they said, it's like $2,500. I go, well, I'm going to be here for the show anyway. I might as well take that 25. So I did it. Carrie Snow did it. I'm sure some other people did it. It was really hard. I mean, it was hard. Then they brought in a real professional warm-up, Mark Sweetman, I think they brought in, and
yes, Mark Sweet.
That was, I mean, he was fabulous, but I couldn't, I couldn't be with that. After a while, I go, wait a minute, this started to become my family now, and that's not good for my dynamic of performing. I've been here too long, 6 hours, whatever.
Yeah, I want
to say something about Rickles, by the way. You just reminded me something about Rickles.
Yeah,
people forget that Rickles, he attacked the audience, but in his act, he'd come out and for the first 10, 15 minutes did jokes about himself being a henpecked Jewish husband.
Yep.
So he cut himself pretty good before he went into the audience with blades. So I just got to bring that up. You just reminded me now. I want to write that down.
Yeah, Don would be there, 10, 15 minutes, ripping himself, ripping his family, ripping everybody, ripping Bob Newhart, ripping everybody. And it was a phenomenal time for me because I was 16 years old, and my buddy, friend of the family, like an uncle, Sid Galper, was doing Howard Cunningham, his landscaping. So he got a couple tickets at Paramount, and Brady Bunch was my favorite show of all time. So we went in there, and Marty Klein was the warm-up guy. I don't know if you remember him. He was unbelievable. And I said, I want to do this. But it was only, maybe 10 years later, I started. Oh, my God. Warm-up is tough, man. 3 o'clock in the morning, you got to make the audience laugh in the same joke they did 4 hours earlier, right?
Yeah, you don't want to make them laugh too much, though. See, that was the whole thing.
Yeah.
The comics instinct, our instincts, go up there and treat them like any other audience. And it took me about 5-10 minutes before I realized I got to pull it back, and I didn't know how to dial it back. You got to dial it back, just make it about the show, and try to keep them a little loose and funny, but not make them laugh too much. You want to laugh them out because they need to last for the audience.
Yeah, and if you're if you're funnier than the show, you're gone. It happened to me a couple times. Some of the writing was so bad, I had to do what I had to do to get them to laugh. I paid them off with lollipops, sandwiches. Oh, wait a minute! I ate all those before I performed. I fed them because if they're fed and they're happy, they'll do what I ask. That kind of stuff. How about you, Fish? How did you start your career as a bartender?
You still there?
Then he left.
I left. Good.
No, I'm back.
Good.
I'm back.
Good.
Good. How about you, Fish?
If I have to hear about the Hollywood Tropicana,
I'm sorry. The pizza guy was just here.
The pizza guy just arrived.
Actually, I started bartending in college, but the way I can compare to you guys is like, I want to ask you, Rich and Brad, this is as a bartender, and I still do it. And Rich, I want to ask you this, since you're the senior aficionado on being a comic. I have to read the room. How many times you got on stage and a couple of your jokes aren't going to work and you got to change gears? I got to read the 20 or 30 people in my bar. I have gaming around my bar. People are gambling. So people are losing 1,000. People are drinking. People are eating. Other guys losing 5,000. I got to talk to 15 different people, 15 different ways. So when you guys get on stage, Brad and Rich, have you had that experience? And it's a stupid question, but I got to ask, where I got to change gears. I'm not reading this room right.
Yeah, it's so important. I started bartending. I bartended in college, and then I bartended when I got out of college, and I hitchhiked around and ended up back in my hometown like a boomerang, homing pigeon, and I bartended at a popular bar in my hometown, and I loved it because I was in control. When it's like being a stand-up, but also controlling the flow of drinks. So, I didn't realize then that a lot of people were laughing at me because they would, try to get a free drink from me or whatever. And they started doing this thing. The guys who owned the bar said, "Hey, you want to make it some extra money? Run these punch boards." So this is 1974, 75, before any internet gambling and all. And it was these punch boards that have I have one here.
Is this
Yeah,
unbelievable? This guy,
yeah,
he's the
yeah.
best. I
Look,
love him.
look. I have it here. These punch boards back in the day, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
there's 1,000 numbers in here, and the
Yeah.
little holes, and you have these little keys on the back, like a key, and you push. So there'd be a number at the top, right? You write a number at the top, and then they push out. If they got that number, they got the $50 or whatever it was, right? And it cost them a quarter a punch or whatever. Well, it didn't take my greedy little ass long to figure out if I wrote the number at the top before I gave them the punch board, and I punched out a number, read that number, wrote that number at the top, and threw the piece of paper away. It was a rigged board. They couldn't win that board, right? But here's the key to that. You have to keep track of which one's a rigged board and not a rigged board. So they were building a nuclear generation plant near my hometown. So this place in the daytime when it was raining was filled with construction workers, guys who were working on this nuclear plant, big guys from Texas all over the place in there drinking and going crazy. And one day one guy goes, "Hey, I noticed nobody's won one of them punch boards in a while." And everybody goes, "Yeah." All of a sudden, the crowd starts turning on me, man. It was time. I'd been busting their balls for months and months and months. And all of a sudden, I didn't realize at the time, but they were turning on me. And one of those guys goes, "Give me that board." And he pulls out a wad of money, pounds it on the table, in the bar. And he goes, "All right." And he starts punching numbers, man. He says, "I don't get a winner here. I'm going to kick your ass." He's looking at me, man, just kept punching, throwing money at me and punching, and I'm sweating. I'm back there drinking shots, I'm trying to make it funny. But inside, I'm dying, man. I go, I don't know if that's a rigged board or not. He gets down to where there's 10 numbers left. That's all, man. It's all you can see is air through there. And the place is chanting on every number, right? Every time he punches over there, they're like, "Kill him, kill him, kill him." And me is who they're talking about killing. They got the door blocked. I can see guys have moved around. I can't get down to the end of the bar. They blocked that way out. When he hit the winning number, you'd never seen a bar more fucking disappointed, man. It was like a letdown after a Super Bowl loss. And all I did was I go out of the bar, act like nothing happened. I go out back, I throw up, I come in, I take all the punch boards, throw them in the trash, and never touch them again, man.
Oh my gosh, that is a fun.
Funny.
Where are you living now, Rich? Where do you live?
I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. My hometown was Pennsylville, New Jersey. I lived in LA from 82 when I moved out there in 82, my first wife, Carol Leifer. And then I left there in 2019 with another wife, Rana Dragon. So I came with a wife and left with a different wife.
And are you married today?
Oh yeah, I'm married. Yep. Yeah.
And you got kids?
I had 3 kids by the second wife.
Nice.
None by the third. 3 kids by the second wife.
And do any of them want to be a comedian or a comedian?
No. They all have good sense of humor, but I feel pretty good. I never gave them the disease of stand-up.
It is unbelievable. Hey,
go ahead.
Yeah, Fish, I want you to tell some of your stories at the bar.
Yeah.
Fish has got some great. No. Fish. Wait, calm down one second. I just wanted you to tell them the story about the one guy who got in your face, and maybe you had to throw him out, but you had backup from the guy in the kitchen, but you did everything by yourself. Remember that story?
That's happened. Matter of fact, I got in more bar fights throwing people out with Tony Visick, who's the toughest. Tony's about what? What'd you say? 5'7", 5'8", Rich?
Yeah, I'd say about 5'7", 5'8". He is,
and he's built like Barry Sanders, the running back. He could fight, and he was infamous for watch the front door, and he'd have a guy in a headlock, and the head went right into the door. Right? Oh, I'm sorry. Did that hurt? That kind of guy. I got a couple questions we're putting to. We 6 degrees of separation with Tony. My wife's from Youngstown, Ohio, and we have a really good friend, Boom Boom Mancini. He goes invites us to dinner one night in LA, right? And who's sitting there with them? I want you to meet a good friend of Ray. I want to meet a good friend of mine, Ed O'Neill. Now, does Luke Ventura sound familiar to you, Rich? When you played him on
that was my character in the show. Ed O'Neill was a great guy. He is a
Oh,
great
great
guy.
guy.
Yeah.
Great guy to work with. He was funny. He was supportive. You know, I beat out one of the producer's best friends for that role. Fox wanted me that role rather than his friend.
Oh
So,
boy.
so the producer did not like me from the get go. You know, one of the creators of the show,
Surprise.
Ron
Surprise.
Levitt, Michael Moy. Michael Moy is his name.
Yeah.
But Ed was always in
Great
my
guy.
corner, always backed me.
Yeah.
He's just a great regular guy. You know, he was the one who's last cut on the Steelers. You know, he tried to play professional football, came back to a factory, then found the acting bug. It's sort of like Bruce Willis equivalent in South Jersey from where I grew up. And left that job and became an actor. And he just, you know, I can't say enough good about the guy. He's a great guy, funny
Great
guy.
guy.
And
Well,
Youngstown was in that area. Warren, Ohio. Do you know Warren, Ohio?
sure. Yeah, of
Warren,
course.
Ohio had a comedy club in
Yeah.
1981. I didn't know it was a mob town. I did not know Warren, Ohio was a mob town. I go, how is Warren, Ohio? I mean, big city towns didn't have regular comedy clubs, you know? Big
Oh, I
cities,
could.
a lot of big cities didn't have them. But Warren,
I,
Ohio got one.
you want to hear my You want to hear my comedy? At my wedding reception, Boom Boom goes to me, check underneath the tables in the reception area because he was in my wedding party. I go, why? He goes, check for bombs. Do you see some of the people that your father-in-law knew? You know, the Bartolos and the Cafaros. One last
And,
thing, Brad. I know you want to run with Rich for a few minutes, but you got to talk about this 2010 documentary you did called I Am Comic, where you traveled
Yeah,
around
yeah,
interviewing comics.
yeah.
How great was that for you?
Yeah. Jordan Brady was the director, and I'd
Right.
written the book
oh,
with
I
Mark.
love him.
We didn't write the book, but Mark Schiff and I compiled stories from stand-ups in a book called I Killed. Came out like 2005, and 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 in that, Jordan Brady read it and said, "I want to do a documentary based on that kind of book." And so we went out to find out why people did it. And I always ask comics, "What was the first time you got a laugh? You know, as a kid, or whatever." And then Jordan at some point realized, you know, he's a director. He doesn't really have a story. He has a bunch of interviews with comics. One day we're sitting in the UCB, you know, Upright Citizens Brigade in Hollywood, and we're watching a show, these young comics. I guess Jordan, he said he saw lust on my face when I was watching these guys get laughs, you know. He goes, wait a minute, I got a storyline. I'll bring this old bastard back to the stage, you know, which is what he did. Because I hadn't done stand-up in a long time. And that made it kind of fun and interesting for Jordan. It was kind of turmoil for me. I wasn't really sure. You know, it's like, but he pointed a camera at a narcissist, and what was I going to do? You know what I mean? So I
It's
jumped into it.
amazing. Yeah, it's amazing when you reconnect with people, you know. But I want to
Yeah,
give a
yeah.
shout out to a very special person. I met him one time through Lenny Clark at the Comedy Store, Joe Rogan. Because in 2007, Joe Rogan outed Carlos Mencia, and it was an
Yeah.
epic thing. I mean, I'm like, wait a minute, that's
Right.
me. Wait a
Wait a minute.
minute.
Celia, I
Wait a
love
minute. You
that.
got to hear. You got to hear the I Am Comic story about that.
Oh yeah, please.
He's in I Am Comic. That had happened. So this is 2009. We're doing this documentary. Joe and him had that battle starting in 2007, right?
Correct.
So Jordan goes, I want to interview, you know, Carlos Mencia. His manager says, you cannot bring that cheating or stealing thing up. You can't bring it up. If you bring it up, Carlos will walk, and we will not give you permission for this. You have to get permission, right? You had to get a release slip from him.
Yeah.
So, okay, fine. We won't bring it up. I'm there. Jordan's there. Camera set up. Crew's there. Carlos walks over, goes, I want to tell you something about stealing. And he just goes off. I don't say a
Oh
word to
God,
him.
no.
And he goes, you think I'm stealing? You're right. I'm stealing because I do the jokes better. He does a whole mea culpa. He
Oh
does a whole
God.
confession on camera.
I
Then when he finishes, it doesn't even call his manager, and he just signs the release and says, fuck you, fuck everybody, and walks out. He did not care. He did not care one bit. And then we're like, well, that was easy.
Does he still have a career?
Oh, he did. Look, he had a show. Remember his show?
Yeah,
He had
on
a show
MTV.
He
Yeah.
had a show. And so I think look, most of these people, there's a few people who got away with high level thievery. Dennis Leary with Bill Hicks. Dice Clay stole Otto and George's rhymes. There's a couple people who made real money and success out of stealing. Most of them, they're just avoiding the inevitable, you know, and it doesn't really last for long or work for long. Look, we know it's a performance art. you have to be a writer and a performer, but you don't have to be a writer, really. You can buy jokes, you can take old jokes and refit them for your act, or you can steal, which is what happens, right? I don't know why they choose to steal, but that's it. It is a performance art first and foremost. So if you
Yeah,
can
I remember.
connect with the audience, you'll find jokes to
Oh,
do it with.
absolutely. I mean, all jokes have been delivered in different
Yeah,
decades.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But you
yeah.
don't want to do ones being
Oh,
done
no.
exactly the way
Stealing
they
is
are now
stealing. Yeah.
today. Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember, God bless him, Robin Williams was one of the greatest. But I remember he was stealing a lot of Stephen Pearl stuff, and I remember Stephen Pearl coming up to him and saying, Robin, you stole this joke. Gets out his checkbook, gives him a check,
I have a
right
story
there.
about that. I have a story about that.
Yeah.
That's how he was later. He was doing that way later. Now, I think he took as much from Steven, and there was other guys apparently too, but Steven's style also fit Robin, because Steven was really working, off the top of his head. Steven worked real fast and frenetic. So Robin, the word got around, that Robin was paying. I didn't know this. I didn't know he was paying. I had a joke back in the late 80s. It was, everybody was talking about the Antichrist. I said, well, it's not me. I checked my scalp. I got 2 6s and a 5. It was a funny little joke, quick joke. I did it on Letterman one night. I did it on Letterman like on a Tuesday night. I know it's a stupid joke, but it was funny back
I
then.
love it. No, it's
Super,
funny.
great.
Yeah, right. And I had little tags to it and all that. So I do it on a Tuesday on a Letterman show, right? The next Saturday, I get a bunch of phone calls after Saturday Night Live saying, Robin did your Antichrist joke on Saturday Night Live. And I'm like, look, first of all, there's nothing you can do about it. Secondly, I already got the joke. I got my money's worth out of the joke on Letterman. I got it stamped me first on Letterman. So I didn't really worry about it. But the next week, I'm at the Improv in LA. Robin comes up to me. Now, we know each other from a lot of ways. And he goes, hey, Rich, I heard I took one of your jokes. Because Robin a lot of times didn't know. He worked, a lot of guys, we have these filters. You can't help it. You may think of a Carlin line at the moment. You think this would work well. And you go, can't do it, Carlin line. And then you got to But Robin, it's like there's a line from, I know I'm going off, but there's a line from the Shootist. Remember the Shootist? It was John Wayne's last movie. He's dying of cancer. And Ron Howard says to him, he's an old gunfighter. John Wayne, old gunfighter. He says, you never lost a gunfight. All those gunfights, you never lost. He says, because a lot of men in that moment will hesitate to fire on another guy. I never hesitated. Wow. And Robin never hesitated. When a line came to his mind, it came right out. Quickest, fastest, and improv wins. So he comes up to me at the Improv in LA and he goes, I stole one of your jokes. I said, yeah, I know. I heard, Robin. He says, I want to pay for it. And at the time, jokes were going for like $50, maybe 100. Rodney paid 50, maybe 100. I go, I don't want to look like a piker in front of Robin. You gave me $100, So I'm like, nah, Robin, it's no big deal. I already did on Letterman. Robin's like, thank you very much, and leaves. I walk over to the bar. I tell my buddies this. They go, you idiot. He's paying $1,500 for jokes he steals. I go, fuck, where is he? I'm looking around.
I'm gonna kill him.
I gotta get that $1,500, man.
Oh my God.
That's just Robin. And look, they used to have a light going in the Improv in LA. And I know this was other rooms too. If Robin came into the room, the MC would flash the red light like crazy. Not like once or twice, meaning get off. Flash it a bunch, and people knew that was a signal that Robin was in the room. And you'd see guys doing their act going, and then my mother said, and then they go, oh, where are you from? And they start doing crowd work. Where are you from? Where are you from? They dropped their act and started into crowd work because they didn't want Robin to steal. But I never got the thing of like, you can't worry. Jackie Mason once said, people don't come to see a particular joke. They come to see a personality, and that's what they pay for. So they don't come to see a particular joke. They come to see a personality. And that's what it is. They come to see the personality. They decide. They don't decide because you got the look. There are guys that have jokes that are off the chart, and that becomes their personality. That's Stephen Wright. There's a Stephen Wright, right? Right. But most comics, we're all grocers. We're all working in the same area. The shelves are stocked with the same shit people can relate to. That's what it is. So you don't have a jokes that are that much different than anybody else's. But it is a thing about
Rich. Rich, I got a great story for you. So, the comedian Bruce Fine.
Yeah,
you know Bruce?
I know Bruce.
Man, he's from Boston, yeah.
He had a garage sale. He was selling all the soaps he stole from the cruise ships in his garage sale. He had little soaps from all the hotels, the little shampoo bottles. He had them still. He's selling them in his garage sale. I know Bruce.
He's one of my dear friends, and I met him at the LA Comedy Cabaret.
He's great. I love it.
And he took me to an event I'll never forget. Bud Friedman's Celebration of Life at the Improv. Okay? There were so many people there. But Bruce knew the doorman, and he goes, Bruce, I got 2 seats right here. I was right next to Robert Morton, okay, from the Letterman show, and Bruce was on the end. What I saw and the stories I heard were incredible. And then they said, what was Bud Freeman's favorite comedian? Ritch Shydner. No, it was Andy Kaufman. Did you ever meet Andy Kaufman?
No, did you know a story? I just put it up on the thing. Andy, I was it takes a couple minutes to do the story, but I was the MC one night in 1981 in New York City Improv. Andy Kaufman comes in with 2 wrestlers, professional wrestlers, Lou Albano, Captain Lou Albano,
Had to-
and
Oh,
Freddie
yes.
Blassie.
with that
Freddie,
fucking
you pencil neck Geek
yeah.
Blassie, right? So I'm a kid. I was a huge wrestling fan, Bobo Brazil, all those guys, San Martino, Bruno San Martino. So I go over to these guys and I go, oh, I can't believe you're here. And I start talking wrestling with them. But I'm emceeing, I got to bring acts up. So I leave and go bring acts up. I come back. Andy comes up to the bar. Now I know I'm bringing him up. I say, well, you want? He said, no, don't worry about that. Bring me up any way you want. I want to talk about the wrestling thing. I understand you know something about wrestling. I said, yeah, I wrestled. I didn't tell him I wrestled in high school, I wrestled in college, but I was a professional wrestling nut when I was a kid. He says, I'm going to do a wrestling thing and I'm going to wrestle a woman on stage. I want you to manage the women. I go, a professional wrestling manager, man, was my dream in show business. Before I wanted to be a stand-up comic, those guys, they cheat. They hook the guys with their cane and trip them in the ring. They were always lying. I love those guys. I said, yeah, I got it. He said, all right. So I go in and I bring Andy up. It's a packed house, New York City. This is before there were comedy clubs everywhere. If you wanted to see comedy, you went to New York City, packed place, hot crowd. Andy Kaufman's a celebrity. They go crazy. Andy. I go in the back room and watch him. He goes, I love women. He's got this little ratty, one of those old sweatshirts on, like a little gray gray sweatshirt and a gray pants, and he's got a paunch belly and he's strutting around the stage. He goes, I love women. And the audience is like, yeah, we love women, love women. You know what I love them best? When they're cooking for me and they're cleaning my house. That's what they should be doing. Now, this is 1981, man. He goes, they should be doing that and not trying to be what men are. You can't compete with men. You can't run a business. And he's turned the crowd. I mean, within seconds, they're starting to grumble. Now they're outright booing the guy. They are booing him. He says, no woman is equal to man. And he goes, look at this body. And he's flexing like nothing. He's got nothing to flex. He's like, look, and he goes, look at this. No woman can beat me in wrestling. And in the back room, I start yelling, yeah, pig, sexist pig. I start coming up on stage. He's yelling at me. I yell at him. We do some stage, shoves that don't, right? And he's like, come on, any woman trying to beat me in wrestling. And he pulls out $500 bills. He takes the $500 bills. He goes, any woman who can beat me in wrestling can have this $500. And he puts it on the piano, which is in the back of the stage, puts it on an improv piano. Come on. And the women are like coming out of their seats. They want to get at him. So, and then he makes it even more sexy. He goes, you're not cute enough. You're not cute enough. I mean, he's picking them by that. They look, oh my God, they hated him so much. The place is booing him. Finally picks this woman. She takes off her heels. She goes, what should I do? I knew what was up. I said, listen, as soon as I say wrestle, just pick up his leg, right? So I'm like the referee now. And I go, all right, ready, wrestle. And she picks up his leg and he falls on his back. The tiny little stage. He falls back. She falls on top of him. I give it the one, bam, 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 pin. She jumps up. The place goes crazy. Like she just won the Olympics. They're screaming and cheering. I don't see it. But behind me, Andy takes the $500 bills off the bar, the piano top, and he's waving it over his head like Snidely Whiplash. He's like, and he takes and he kicks open the side door and he exits right the side door, and the room instantly tries to chase him. I mean, tables are flying, guys are jumping up out of their chairs. They're running out through this door. They're jammed in like a Three Stooges bit where there's like 3 guys trying to get through at once. Andy gets into the limo. That Fred Blassie and Albano were out there already in the limo. Andy gets in. He waits for guys to start coming out of the improv, right? This side thing. And the limo starts going down the street slowly, and he's waving the money out the window, and guys are chasing after him. I'm telling you, half the room ran out of the bar trying to get him. They ran out of the club. They ran out. And we couldn't put that room together for 5 acts. I mean, 5 acts went in the toilet every time. He had taken a comedy club audience and turned them into a professional wrestling audience, and they never knew it happened. They never realized he was fucking with them. It was the most unreal performance I'd ever seen any stand-up do, bar none. It was incredible. And he came back, and by the way, I didn't put this in the story because it was too long. This was already too long. He came back the next night and thanked me. He came back in the club the next night and he thanked me. humble, nice guy.
Yeah.
He did something. You got, and again, I'll say this about Andy Kaufman. You have to put him in context for the time period. This is what.
Oh, sure.
In that period, when he came in doing this stuff in the late 70s. And this is 81, but because of Vietnam War, we'd lost the Vietnam War. 75, Vietnam collapses. Watergate. President resigns. Americans were so cynical. They were so down, cynical. And he put the fun back in step. He put, you think you got it all figured out? You think you got it all figured out? You ain't got it figured out. I'm not going to go up there and just tell jokes. I'm going to fuck with it. He put a devilish little thing in the stand-up comedy that was so important
genius,
back then. It was
We're going to have you, Rich, we're going to have you back. We want to end with you promoting your book, promoting whatever you're doing. What's going on with you right now?
I'm just into the stand-up history thing. I'm not sure if I'm going to write a book. I wouldn't have the hubris to call it the history of stand-up. I would just say a history of stand-up, America's reflection in the funhouse mirror. That's what I've titled it. And I want to do the show, the history of stand-up comedy. I want to do that. That's what I'm really interested in.
Okay.
You can get me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Call me. I'll come to your house and tell you stories. I don't care, man.
Rich,
I so enjoyed you guys.
Hey, Rich, I got to tell you something. We need to talk sooner than later because I have something for us, and maybe we'll include Fish. But no,
man.
I have something that is it's money,
Fish out.
and Fish is my buddy. He's my brother. I love him. But I'm going to tell you something. Please give me your phone number. I'm going to call you, tomorrow, the next day. I pitched it to Howie Mandel. I pitched it around town, and they always come back with the same thing, Rich. We already have something like that in development. Okay.
That's the problem with doing it, man. You know that every time you go, yeah, we have something like that. And then as soon as you need the boss, they go, get Larry in here. I got something for her to tell him. I got an idea.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Ritch Shydner. Check him out everywhere. That's Eric Fish Schneider. I'm Brad Grenny Grunberg, a.k.a. Snacks. We'll see you next time on 105 Fat Fish. Thanks, Rich.
Rich, hit me up if you're in Vegas, buddy.
All right, you guys, are we off the air now?
No.
Not yet. Now we're off the air. Go off the air, and then we can talk.
Write
go.
down. Here's my phone.
You've been listening
wait.
to the Fat Fish Podcast.
One sec.
On all your favorite platforms. Until next time.